welcome to Behind the Stethoscope. Breast cancer treatment is only one part of the journey. Returning to work, rebuilding identity and restoring routine is another. Today we focus on what that transition really looks like and how women can navigate it with confidence and care. We are joined by Dr. Sewanti, whose extensive experience in oncology and survivor care gives her a unique perspective on recovery, resilience and long-term health. She'll share practical guidance on managing well-being, maintaining balance and lowering the risk of reoccurrence while returning to professional life. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sewanti. My first question to you would be, what are the biggest challenges that women face after the treatment when they go back to working? What are the biggest challenges they would face?
So normally post breast cancer treatment, usually we expect people to just bounce back, treatment khatam ho gaya and you have to just come back to your normalcy. But it is a new normal, even 6 months to a year after completing treatment, and sometimes very rarely much later even after that. There are physical challenges, emotional challenges, and I really don't want to scare people, but of course there is fatigue. There is what they call chemo brain. There's much written about the cognitive slowing, temporary for sure, but many women have talked about it, thousands of women have talked about the slowing of the brain post chemotherapy exposure. So, suddenly your treatment is over, you're expected to become normal, and you're coming back not just to home and home chores and expectations of the family, but also going back in today's times to working. And then having to deliver at work at pace with the peers is another huge challenge. And fatigue and cognitive slowing, albeit mild, and of course the emotional challenges, huge emotional challenges. There may be a physical difference in how someone looked before the diagnosis, and through the journey the appearance may have changed. Sometimes I even feel that the appearance changes for better, but a lot of times there is a change, right? Most of the time there is a change. So aesthetic differences in how someone looked and how they perceive that emotional difference. What is the confidence level after having gone through that journey? Does that remain the same? Has the patient taken a beating? How did the family handle? What kind of emotional support did the patient have? And where are they in their mind when they are trying to bring themselves back to facing the family and the community again and the work community? That's all contributing to what they feel when they come back.
Right, definitely. So we spoke about emotional and physical vulnerability after the treatment. How do you think a woman can understand that she is ready physically and emotionally to go back to work? What are the signs and what are the things that you would need to discuss with your doctor?
Unfortunately, there are no measures in general. I mean, the measures that we look at as doctors in our in the clinic with the patient are mostly you're looking at the blood counts, you're looking at the vitals, and all of that actually are very, very preliminary things. They have to get better within 2 to 3 weeks after the chemotherapy completion or the radiation, which is the last thing that happens. And sometimes women also require maintenance treatment. By that time, they may already be back at work. When someone is going through a targeted therapy in maintenance, they may already be back at work. And still they may be experiencing issues with blood counts and fatigue and mood changes and all of that. And but they are already on maintenance therapy for breast cancer. So maintenance is still a challenge that needs to be dealt with differently, but just immediate post treatment when they go back, how do they figure out the readiness? So mostly there is a doctor's visit when we say, okay, your counts are normal, you're done with the therapy and everything is looking good, and now I want you to come back and follow up 3 months later.
Okay.
And in these 3 months, on a monthly basis, you're supposed to do this, do that, and at 3 months you do X number of tests and come back. This visit is most critical. If there is a working woman or even a stay-at-home person, they must look at that visit as one anchoring visit to how they are going to conduct their follow-up period. That visit is most critical.
Okay. So you talked about fatigue and stress and everything. So how can someone rebuild that energy and focus on their work after the treatment is over?
Yeah, I think the word is focus.
Yeah.
Because you have to bring back the focus. Life was all over the place, you're running and you're doing all this. But when you're doing the therapy, I've seen a lot of patients, when they're doing the therapy, they're very focused. A lot of the times there is a temporary disintegration when the therapy gets over.
Yeah.
Because now there is no longer a routine. Suddenly you're not back at work, but you're also not back at the hospital.
Yeah.
So there is a void and nobody's around because everybody was there when you were getting treated.
Yeah, and
then everybody said, okay, your treatment is over and you're all good now. But you're not all good.
Yeah.
You have all these issues from the therapy, you have the emotional baggage from the therapy, and so you need to get back. So I think discipline and focus are two of your saviors to get the confidence back, to get yourself back on feet. Discipline and focus, they are your saviors, because when you say discipline, you're actually just following a regime, following a regimen. Following a regimen through your day. I'm going to wake up at this time, I'm going to drink this, I'm going to do exercise. So your day is in control because you have it laid out. I'm going to have this for breakfast. So when we say exercise, we talk about 3 to 5 times a week of moderate intensity exercise. Moderate intensity exercise, roughly, and if you look it up, it's like 30 minutes of brisk walk.
Okay.
Now, by the book, at least this. But what do I say? I say, this is from what I follow personally, or at least I try to follow personally. You've got to take down the sugar surge that happens after every meal.
Okay.
Whether you eat sugar or not, the sugar surge is happening because that's the last molecule which fuels your body. So, to cut the sugar surge, which is responsible for the highs and the lows. If you go through the high, you're going to go through the low of the sugar. So you've got to blunt that. How do you blunt that? You blunt that by having complex carbs. You blunt that by having rich protein diet and less of regular carbs, processed carbs in your food, especially breakfast. And you then follow that with a 20 to 30 minute brisk walk.
Okay.
Each meal followed by 20 to 30 minute brisk walk. If you can afford that, that would be great, because that ends up being at least 1500 to 2000 steps post each meal. And at the end of the day, without a whole lot of disruption in your schedule, you've already walked 6000 steps in a day. So, but that is one way of exercising. The other, which is becoming much more prominent now, is also spending some time 2 to 3 times a week on weight training. That is also very important because that helps build muscle, that helps build tone in your body and build fitness. So that becomes extremely important for someone to work on that. So good diet, good exercise and workout, and good sleep.
Okay.
So these 3 things are most integral to beginning to feel better. And many of our patients actually today are so aware, they are doing these, they are following these rules even more than a regular person during their therapy.
Okay.
And a lot of the centers are propagating that, a holistic healing through the treatment. And patients who do onco rehab during the treatment actually tolerate the treatment better. They have less relapses, and they have higher survival. This is not a hearsay. This is data that is being proven and published again and again and again and again. And so now we have data published in the Gospel of Medicine, New England Journal of Medicine, validating this process and this theory.
Okay. So basically a good meal,
good meal, good exercise,
diet,
good sleep,
yes,
and discipline and focus.
Yeah.
What do I want to do? I want to heal. I have to get back to work. I want to get back to my family, and these are the rules that I'm going to follow.
Okay. Also, many survivors they enter into this immunocompromised phase. So, how do you think they can rebuild their immunity after the treatment is over?
So, you know, when we talk about immunity, it is a very vague subject because immunity cannot be built by a pill, unlike what a lot of the supplement medications claim that they are building immunity. When you really see, it is actually by eating healthy. Yes, if you've not taken proper supplements and you doubt that you may not be supplemental well through your diet, taking a multivitamin a day is a routine, especially for women and women with breast cancer who are in the perimenopausal or menopausal state. We say calcium, vitamin D, very important. So one multivitamin, calcium, vitamin D, all of these supplements are supposed to be taken. But in general, a good meal is what helps build immunity over a period of time. The immunity is not going to build overnight by taking a pill that is considered an immune booster, not at all.
So what are the practical steps that women can actually take when they go back to work after the treatment? Anything like, flexible workspace and, working in it?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for anyone is to not get overwhelmed. See, I say this all the time. When someone got diagnosed, there is a life-changing event that has happened in their lives. And so allow yourself to heal physically and emotionally. You will come back and you will do it. You've conquered this, you will conquer that as well. But don't overwhelm yourself. So coming back gradually is very important. There is this fear of missing out. I missed out, and all working women go through that, right? If at work you fall sick for 5 days, you're like, I missed out on this, I missed out on that, I missed out on that. So when someone has gone through a sickness period, they are going to feel they have missed out. But that's the moment of pause. Actually remind yourself, this is the time to heal and come back complete, whatever is complete. But try to achieve that emotionally as well as physically. So physical healing, I described all of that with diet and exercise and good sleep. That contributes also to confidence and emotional healing. And then of course the interpersonal relationships, the relationship with the lady's husband, with the patient's husband, interpersonal relationship with the parents and siblings, interpersonal relationships with the community, the work environment. I think communication is also key, most critical. A lot of us don't communicate. Of course, communication is a personal choice. If you don't want to tell your workmates, no problem. You have the authority to keep it to yourself. But if you can weave a network around yourself, both at work, at home, people who you can confide in, talk to, the worst of your fears, who you can bond with, people who will be there for you, therapy after therapy, doctor visit after doctor visit. Don't allow yourself to feel lonely. Be accompanied, share, discuss your fears. that itself is a huge counseling. And if you don't have that, and even if you do, but you feel you're vulnerable, seek professional counseling. And a lot of centers today, comprehensive centers actually provide counselors on site. Ask for the counselor, meet with the counselor. But one of the things that I've seen in India is there is some dearth of professional counselors. And even if they're usually overworked. And how do you bond with someone who's in a rush and you want to talk something very, very personal? So I think that's a challenge, and that's where I feel the community in India is an ever powerful counseling network, and you have to choose wisely though. You don't want a negative person. You just don't want a negative person around you who's going to pull you down. You don't want a critique around you who's going to pull you down. You want positive energy, and you need to find that.
Well, I think that's for everyone. Nobody wants a negative person around us.
That's so true.
Yeah, but also with the cancer treatments and breast cancer treatments, there is also a fear of reoccurrence. So what steps should you take so that doesn't happen, it doesn't reoccur?
That's a brilliant question for two reasons. I think, so there is a scientific follow-up schedule, right? And we do that, we tell the patient, and we form the schedule for the patient, and we have them follow up. For first 2 years, it's a rigorous follow-up, every 3 monthly, then you go slow down to every 4 monthly, and then every 6 monthly, and X number of tests, and come back. And then newer tests have also come in where we do something called minimal residual disease in blood. It's called liquid biopsies. You track the patient with imaging, you track the patient with liquid biopsy, all of that to predict a recurrence early. But what can be done to prevent that recurrence early? One, you have to participate in the maintenance activities, whatever the doctor is telling you. Be very, very proactive in doing that. Seek the right answer, not just at the time of diagnosis in the first treatment, but also when finalizing maintenance. Seek that as a new landmark to understand. If there's ambiguity, seek second opinions and make sure that your follow-up and your tracking to prevent relapse and to mark relapse, if it does happen, to mark it early. Do that rigorous follow-up very carefully. But the other thing, which is also very critical, when I said two things, I meant this second one as well, lifestyle. So, we go back to work, and then health becomes secondary. Because you've had so much, you've missed so much. You've missed your work time, you've missed your family time, that follow-ups may not remain as important or as much of a priority in your front brain. That has to change, and that's where I say discipline. So put it on your calendar, just like every other work meeting, and keep your promise. Get there, do the testing, do your workouts. If that is now proven to decrease relapse, that's the least we can do in our lives, and keep that regimented, keep that as disciplined as it can get. And the last thing I would say is, when we are following, we are fearful, the patients are fearful that the disease will come back, and sometimes some very rare patients actually fear going back to the clinic to get checked. But that fear of finding out, that whole thing should go away even from screening, leave alone from the people who have already been diagnosed. The biggest enemy is the disease. So you need to really be in careful surveillance, is what I tell my patients.
Definitely. Now when you go back to work, it's also very important that your employer, helps you out. So what are the steps that employers can actually take to help the patient come back, the survivor come back and work with the environment? What kind of environment should you create?
Our work environments are severely deficient.
Very stressful and fast-paced.
And we are talking about a woman thing. Okay. So that same woman would have taken some time off earlier in life And so there are so many gaps that happen in a working woman's journey, because there's always some added responsibility on a woman. And so through the childbearing times, the woman must have taken a break in her career, and many other home responsibilities may have caused a break in someone's career. And then if there is illness with which they have come, many of our patients who are, strong working force actually really detest taking that break. So I encourage going back to part-time work even during therapy.
Okay.
I say first, take the first cycle, see how it makes you feel, and if you can manage, if it's a 3-weekly cycle, 2 weeks you can think about working. You need to work, immunity is down. So if you can work from home, great. If you can't work from home, wear a mask and go.
Yeah.
And see if you can engage even for 4 hours in a day. And if someone continues to work part-time, they actually continue that same schedule after recovery as well in the initial period, and then they slowly enhance their time. I have to say that work environments are not structured the way things are structured in the West, but environments are changing.
Yeah.
And I am truly hopeful that this will also become a routine, not just for a woman with breast cancer treatment history, but for all cancer patients. So there is something called disability insurance in the West. If someone falls sick with any kind of prolonged illness, they can apply for disability. And that disability is something that you put down money for as soon as you get your employment. This is a very well known and well understood concept in the West. When you get a job, you ask, what is the disability coverage? And you already engage and spend money in your disability when you're starting out your insurance. What is the disability coverage? So through that insurance and through your work and both coming together, there is adequate amount of funds that come even through the disability period. In addition, it allows you to take some time off. Unfortunately, I haven't seen such a system in India. And so we are lagging, but I think the way we are now getting structured and corporate life is really quite similar to what you see in the West. I'm hoping these provisions will come into the Indian society as well, and cancer patients will have some liberty and some flexibility into coming back. But until that happens, I would just say, when a person like this reports to work, even before the therapy gets over, the system has to be flexible. There has to be an HR-led design to, okay, what percentage does the person lose when they come back for these many hours, but how can we anchor this person in a different role or in a lighter presence for a longer period of time and allow that person to slowly bounce back. I also feel that the counseling is not just a personal responsibility. Such a opportunity could also be presented at work.
Yeah.
So most work environments today have different kinds of counselors, but if they could also have a counselor who could help with health issues, including cancer, I think that would be hugely helpful.
I mean, that was really beautifully put, because we've not seen many things coming out at workplaces for anybody facing, just not talking about cancer, other problems as well that take a lot of time to get treated.
Yes.
So now we spoke about the routine, we spoke about the diet. What do you think follow-up and monitoring as a thing for a person who has just received treatment, they want to go back to work, but as you said, they don't go back, follow up, and they don't monitor, which is very crucial. So what role does it play in your work life after
Yeah.
after you treated?
So I think, you know, a lot of responsibility also is shared by the family.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, something that I constantly am explaining to even my workforce, you know, the team that I work with, the juniors, you know, where we say, because you're expecting the patient to be done tomorrow, and then, you know, everything is great.
Yeah.
But there is this whole physical and emotional baggage. It's not a switch on, switch off. It's not going to be like that. You have to ease the person, otherwise you're leaving trauma and scar for life. You know, I personally feel I don't want any battle marks. Battle marks are already there in the patient's psyche. Don't, you know, help ease that out. Truly help ease that out. Nobody deserves to keep baggage with them. So I think there are so many scars through the journey that are visible, and then there are so many scars through the journey that are not visible. Those that are not visible are the toughest. What kind of interpersonal difference did the patient feel with her spouse when diagnosed with, was the spouse mature enough to support? Were their interpersonal relationship, did it, you know, how much did it survive? What happened during that journey? You know, that patient may never tell the doctor, may never tell the support staff, may never tell the family, may never tell her mother, but that's there. So I think, you know, there is no hyper engagement required. Life has to be lived, and you don't nurture grievances, but you support. You definitely support, and you support extra because you don't know what's going through that person's mind, don't know what baggage that person is carrying. Things will heal. Mind is ever powerful. We mostly never remember the dirtiest days and the toughest times. We try to overcome. So surround yourself with positivity, and that's where the discipline brings in hope. And hope is the biggest support and the drawing force. So latch on to that, latch on to the hope, latch on to positivity. But the discipline will bring a lot of comfort, wherein diet, exercise, sleep. If you're coming back, mark your calendar with follow-up days. I'm meeting everything that I'm supposed to do. And of course, understanding from the family and the friends, and just this realization that those that were there through the journey of therapy should not leave side even after the therapy is over. They should just be there, be along, you know, slowly and steadily the person will heal.
Since we spoke about stress and anxiety and everything coming back to work, what are the steps that a woman can take herself, not just, you know, surrounded by family and all that stuff is there, but what can she do to reduce that anxiety at work when she is there?
That's you know, we see this constantly. If the person has to scan on a particular day, even a week before that, there is anxiety, there is lack of sleep, and such stress, you know. Coming back to see the doctor is such a stress. Going through the blood test is such a stress. Am I getting you back? What is going to happen? What is happening to me? So these are recognized symptoms through any tough journey. You know, this, when an extreme form of it is called post-traumatic stress disorder. But even regular patients go through such stress anxieties. And I think there is something called behavioral therapy. Behavioral therapy is when we send patients to a counselor and they do a certain process to correct these issues. But you know, I think behavioral therapy in a smaller way can be practiced by that person themselves. And we all practice, you know. I think all of us who are in frontline work, type A personalities, we go through anxieties and we all manage them. We learn to manage them over a period of time. So one of the things, when I started to do public speaking first, how do you manage your mind about the anxiety to public speaking? You train your mind, you groom yourself, you imagine, you relive that, and you ask yourself to calm down. I teach this to patients all the time. When you're facing that kind of an anxiety to going back to work, going back to a crowd, and you're facing that anxiety within yourself for this change, this big change that has happened to you, and you're going back, think in your mind and calm yourself down. You're going to do this. Talking to yourself, bringing in positivity, positive thoughts of how well you've done in the past, and it's going to be fine. You're the same person, the same confidence, you've just gone through a journey, and it's going to be okay. So I think a lot of this comes through positive reinforcement to yourself, and all of that comes more if you are disciplined, because you've regained, you've built your own confidence over a period of time. I also say looking good is very critical, because if you look in the mirror and you're looking all haggard, you are feeling pity for yourself. So I encourage women, because women generally wish to look well. I said dress for yourself, and cancer treatments many times end up with hair loss. I also encourage getting a wig, a hair prosthesis, because just as you wear a dress, you wear that dress for yourself, right? You're wearing the makeup and the dress for yourself. Wear the hair for yourself. Wear it for yourself. Look good. When you look in the mirror, you're going to look good. And why not? So all of that brings the confidence back. And even if you're not back at work, go out, take a stroll in the day. Go to go to a mall. Dress up and go to a mall. Get your confidence back day after day after day and build it in. Sometimes I also say you get some time off, build a skill, learn something new, do a course, add to your CV, take the downtime, not as your miss but as your gain.
Yeah, that's very important, I think, even for a regular person, like a person who's not faced such things in life. It's very important to be very confident, and I think for me as well, if I don't look good, I might not want to do anything. I would just lay in bed, right? Yeah. So, so on that note, what's one thing you would want to say to everyone watching our show on breast cancer treatment, and how would you reassure and provide guidance to them in one message?
So actually I have two.
Okay, sure, no problem.
So one message, of course, is that therapies have changed now. If at all diagnosed with breast cancer, one has to take it head on. Get to the right center, get to the right doctor, seek second opinions, get the answer for yourself. But the journey has to be taken with a lot of confidence and a lot of courage. And you've got to do it, because breast cancer is highly, highly curable, and so there is no turning back. You just plunge, you do it, and you're going to be out of it. Very high cure rates, and that's what the focus should be, that's what the goal should be, and that's the Arjuna looking at the eye of the fish. Now, second point, if you don't have, this is for a normal person, if you don't have a health insurance, please get a health insurance as big as you can afford that can cover cancer. That's very critical, because the cancer rates are so high today. You cannot ignore the fact, and the data is out there, that there is a significant percentage, and I think 50% of society should be ready to be facing cancer sometime in their lifetime. So what we have to do is we have to prepare, like we prepared for COVID. We prepare for so many other things. If you have children, you prepare for their wedding. So for your own life, you have to prepare to have health issues down the line, and for that a good insurance, not just cancer but aging brings in issues. So you have to prepare with a good medical insurance, and that's my one very big message. And breast cancer is highly preventable. Guys, go get screened.
So be prepared, be confident, and have a routine and a healthy diet.
Healthy diet and exercise, very, very critical, and of course good sleep.
Perfect. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Pallavi, for having me, and thank you for allowing me to lend my voice.